Can youthful passion truly build a better future? Or does it need the steadying hand of experience? This question hung heavy in the air at the prestigious debate forum. Universities across America had sent their brightest minds, and all day, impassioned discussions had ignited the auditorium. But nothing could have prepared anyone for what was about to unfold during the open debate session, a session where any student could challenge the prevailing narrative. The atmosphere buzzed with intellectual energy. When notorious liberal debater Emily Carter strode onto the stage, she was convinced her fierce ideology would silence every dissenting voice. She had no inkling that Barron Trump was about to serve her the most devastating reality check of her life. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. As Emily, famed for her aggressive style, confidently approached the podium, her purple hair framed her determined expression. A slight smirk played on her lips as she adjusted the microphone. "Fellow students," she began, her voice ringing clear and commanding, "we're here to discuss progress. But there's an elephant in the room that we must address: the suffocating grip of outdated generations on our nation's future." The room fell into a heavy silence. Some students shifted uneasily, while others leaned forward, captivated. "Look around," Emily continued, her voice growing bolder. "While we grapple with modern challenges, people over 50 still hold our destiny in their hands. These traditionalists cling to obsolete values, their cherished faith, their so-called patriotism, their rigid family structures." Scattered applause erupted, spurring her on. In the third row, a tall, impeccably dressed young man sat motionless, his expression unreadable, a silent observer. Few recognized him as Barron Trump, quietly watching the debates all day. "These people," Emily said, her tone dripping with disdain, "these boomers who can barely figure out a smartphone still dictate our future. They've had their chance. It's high time we admit that their generation is holding us back from true progress." Her words were met with rising cheers, drowning out the few murmurs of dissent. Her eyes blazed with triumph as she delivered her most controversial point yet. "What we need," she declared, her voice rising with conviction, "is an age limit on political participation. Why should someone who won't live to see the consequences of their choices have any say in our future?" The crowd's reaction intensified. Many students stood, cheering her on. "These people," she continued, making air quotes with her fingers, "with their obsession with God and guns, their nostalgic Make America Great Again rants, they're dinosaurs, they're dead Americas, it's time we left them behind." The applause was thunderous now. Feeding off that energy, Emily grew even bolder. Their so-called values, family values, traditional values, are just code words for resisting progress. These are the same people who built their wealth on privilege and oppression. And now they lecture us on morality. All the while, in the third row, Barron Trump remained still, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly, while around him, students nodded enthusiastically, some even shouting words of agreement. "I propose," Emily's voice cut through the roar of the crowd, "that we start a movement to restrict voting rights and public office to those under 50. Let's face it, they had their chance, they messed it up, now it's our turn." At that moment, the debate moderator, Dr. Harrison, stepped forward with a look of concern. "Does anyone wish to present a counter-argument?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the continuing applause. Emily crossed her arms, satisfaction written across her face. The room began to quiet as students exchanged glances, wondering if anyone would dare challenge such a powerful presentation. "Anyone?" Dr. Harrison repeated, reaching for his papers to move on. Then a deep, clear voice broke the silence. "I would." All heads turned as Barron Trump rose from his seat. His presence promised to shake the stage in ways Emily Carter had never anticipated. "Well, well, look who decided to grace us with his opinion." Emily's voice dripped with sarcasm as she slithered toward the microphone. Laughter scattered through the audience at her mocking introduction. "Daddy's boy himself!" Yet, Barron Trump's composed demeanor remained unruffled as he made his way to the podium. His tall frame and impeccable suit stood in stark contrast to the laid-back vibe of the debate hall. With a flourish, Emily stepped aside and swept an exaggerated gesture toward the microphone. "Go ahead, Donald's pet," she sneered. "Defend your boomer buddies. This should be entertaining." Barron adjusted the microphone with unhurried, deliberate movements. The room held its breath, many expecting him to buckle under Emily's infamous debate tactics. Instead, he offered a slight, genuine smile, no smirk, but one that carried an almost sympathetic warmth. "Thank you for your passionate presentation, Emily," he began, his voice steady and measured. "But passion without wisdom is like a ship without a rudder, powerful yet dangerous." For a split second, Emily's confident smile flickered. She hadn't anticipated such calm, articulate composure. Barron continued, "You speak of progress. But true progress isn't built by tearing down those who came before us. It's built on their shoulders." He paused, letting his words settle over the audience. "When you say someone over 50 shouldn't have a voice in our future, do you realize you're referring to the very people who created the technology behind the research for your arguments?" Emily began to interject, but Barron raised a hand, maintaining a respectful tone. "Please, you had your turn. I listened carefully to every word." The audience stirred. Rarely did they witness Emily's self-check so gracefully. Then, Barron's voice deepened, gaining a resonant edge. "Let's talk about what real progress looks like. You mentioned smartphones," he said with a hint of amusement. "Did you know that many key innovations in your iPhone were developed by people now in their 60s and 70s? The same boomers you so fervently wish to silence." Emily rolled her eyes. "That's ancient history," she retorted. "Speaking of history," Barron smoothly interjected, his tone sharpening beneath its polite veneer. "Let's address your claim that their America is dead. The America they built is the very platform you're using to attack them. The universities where we study. The prosperity that lets us debate instead of merely survive. The freedom to speak your mind without fear. All created and protected by them." All eyes locked on Barron. Even some of Emily's most ardent supporters began nodding thoughtfully. But Emily fired back, frustration rising in her voice. "But they don't understand modern problems." "Really?" Barron raised an eyebrow, his calm intensity unbroken. "The generation that weathered the Cold War, fought for civil rights, endured multiple economic crises, and witnessed the birth of the digital age. Do you really believe they don't understand complex problems? They solve challenges we haven't even begun to comprehend." His words hung in the air. Emily's face flushed with indignation. "But their values," Emily started, her tone passionate. Barron's voice softened, yet carried a quiet intensity. "You mean values like hard work, personal responsibility, and respect for others? The very values that built the greatest nation on earth?" He gestured expansively to the room. "Look around you. Everything in this room, from the chairs you're sitting on to the democratic system that makes this debate possible, was built by people who cherished those values." A murmur spread through the crowd as students exchanged glances. Even Emily's supporters grew noticeably subdued. Barron's gaze swept over the audience as he continued. "But here's what truly concerns me. In the name of progress, you advocate for the most regressive policy imaginable, discrimination based on age. Isn't it ironic that while you claim to fight for inclusion, you're calling for the exclusion of millions of American citizens?" Emily's composure was visibly cracking. She hadn't expected such articulate opposition. "Let me make it even simpler," Barron began, his confidence growing with each word. "Let's look at some of these outdated people you want to silence. Elon Musk, over 50. Bill Gates, over 60. Scientists working on cancer cures, many over 50. The professors who teach us, most of them over 50. And my own father, 78. He paused, letting each example land. "Should we dismiss their contributions simply because of their age?" "Oh, how touching," Emily sneered, her voice thick with sarcasm. "The privileged lecture us about innovation and hard work." With a theatrical gesture, she swept her gaze toward the audience. "Notice how he conveniently mentions billionaires, the elite 1%, hoarding wealth while regular Americans struggle. Several students nodded vigorously, and Emily began to regain her confidence. And, since you brought up your father, let's talk about the values you're so proud of. The values that divide families, dictate who people can love, and force outdated religious beliefs down our throats. Interesting, Barron interjected calmly. How you claim to champion diversity while mocking people's faith, as if their faith oppresses others. Emily's voice rose. Their traditional values are nothing but tools of control. And you, she pointed accusingly at Barron, you're just another trust fund baby defending a system that keeps you on top. The crowd buzzed with renewed energy as many students cheered her attack. But Barron's composed smile never wavered. Let's examine that claim, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. You say these values are tools of control, yet they taught millions to fight for civil rights and build communities. I've been volunteering at veteran shelters since I was 14. How many hours have you spent helping others? The room fell silent for a moment. Emily's triumphant expression flickered. But before she could reply, Barron continued. But that is not, he paused and added, not what you meant, is it? When facts don't match your narrative, you switch to personal attacks, a classic tactic of someone losing an argument. Don't you dare! Emily's voice cracked with rage as she stormed toward the podium, her purple hair wild, her finger jabbing the air. You think you can come here with your suit, your manners, and your privilege, lecturing us about values? The tension in the room was palpable. Some students even stood, feeding off her anger. You want to talk about helping others? She spat. Your family represents everything wrong with this country. The elite, the privileged, hiding behind traditional values while real Americans suffer. She swept her gaze across the crowd, her voice rising to a fever pitch. Look at him, standing there like he belongs, defending the very system that keeps us down. You know what? This freak doesn't deserve to be here. Her words echoed through the suddenly silent room. Dr. Harrison stepped forward, clearly alarmed. But Barron raised a hand. It's okay, Professor, he said quietly, his composure unshaken. Turning to Emily with an almost sympathetic smile, he continued, You know what's interesting, Emily. When facts fail, you resort to shouting. When logic fails, you turn to insults. And when reason fails, he paused, letting the moment hang. You show everyone exactly who you really are. Emily's face flushed a deep red. I'm showing everyone the truth about people like you, she retorted. Barron's voice remained firm, yet gentle. No. You're showing everyone what happens when hatred masquerades as progress. You claim to fight discrimination while you discriminate, preach tolerance while offering none, and demand respect while disrespecting millions of Americans who built this country. The audience fell utterly silent, hanging on every word. Let me tell you what I see here. Barron's voice carried a quiet strength that commanded attention. I see someone so consumed by ideology that she's forgotten a fundamental truth. Every generation stands on the shoulders of those who came before. Emily tried to interrupt, but her voice wavered, stripped of its earlier confidence. You're twisting my... she began. But Barron cut in smoothly. I'm quoting you directly. You called our elders dinosaurs, mocked their faith, and ridiculed their sacrifices. And why? Because they don't share your worldview? That's not progress, that's prejudice. He swept his gaze across the room. You all just witnessed something remarkable. You saw someone who claims to champion diversity while attacking diversity of thought. Someone demanding inclusion while calling for the exclusion of millions. Someone preaching tolerance while showing absolute intolerance for different beliefs. At that, Emily's face paled, and even her supporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But here's the most ironic part, Barron continued, his tone softening with genuine concern. While you stand here demanding that we silence our elders, you're benefiting from their legacy, the very platform you're using to attack them, built by them. The freedoms you enjoy, protected by them. The education you receive, made possible by them. He paused, letting his words sink into the heavy silence. So tell me, Emily, in your vision of progress, Is there room for anyone who disagrees with you? Or is diversity only acceptable when it fits your narrative? Emily opened her mouth to respond, but for the first time since the debate began, no words came out. Barron pressed on, his voice blending authority with compassion. What I find most interesting is this. While you claim to fight for the future, you're repeating the oldest mistake in history, believing that wisdom belongs solely to one group. Emily's fierce demeanor began to crack. Her hands gripped the podium until her knuckles turned white. You see, he continued, true progress isn't about silencing voices. It's about learning from them. Every generation thinks it knows better than the last, until it finally realizes how much there is still to learn. The room fell completely silent. Even the students who had been cheering Emily's attacks now sat in reflective quiet. Those boomers you mock, he said softly, yet powerfully, were once young idealists too. They fought for civil rights, questioned authority, and demanded change. And they learned something invaluable along the way, that lasting progress comes from building bridges, not burning them. Emily's shoulders slumped slightly, the fire in her eyes flickering and dimming, replaced by the first glimmer of understanding. So here's my suggestion, Barron said, his voice gentle but firm. Instead of trying to silence the voices of experience, why don't we listen to them? You might be surprised by how much they understand about change. After all, they've lived through more of it than we ever will. With quiet dignity, he stepped back from the podium and returned to his seat, leaving Emily standing alone with the weight of his words. After his powerful conclusion, Emily quietly resumed her seat. The debate continued, but the energy in the room had noticeably shifted. Students who spoke thereafter were more measured, more thoughtful. Nearly an hour later, as Dr. Harrison was about to close the session, Emily's hand rose tentatively. Yes, Miss Carter? The professor asked wearily, clearly concerned about reopening the earlier conflict. May I speak one more time? Her voice was barely audible, a stark contrast to her earlier confident tone. Several students exchanged worried glances. After a brief hesitation, Dr. Harrison nodded slowly. Briefly, please. Emily's voice was soft. As she made her way to the podium, her steps unsteady, a far cry from the fierce debater who had commanded the stage moments before. Something had changed. The forceful persona was gone, replaced by a woman profoundly shaken. I need to say something, she began, her voice trembling. Earlier today, I stood here full of arrogance, attacking the very foundations of our society and disrespecting millions of Americans who built everything we have. I was wrong. She paused, drawing in a shaky breath. I never imagined that Barron Trump would be the one to show me what true wisdom looks like, that someone I was ready to dismiss could teach me about real inclusivity and compassion. I'm sorry to everyone I offended, to the generations I disrespected. I was blind, and today, my eyes were opened. Without waiting for a response, she stepped down quickly and slipped out of the auditorium. Later that evening, as students filed out of the building, Emily spotted Barron gathering his things. Her heart pounded as she hesitantly approached him, half expecting to be met with the disdain she'd once shown him. Barron, she said softly, her voice small but resolute. Could I talk to you for a moment? He turned, and to her surprise, his face bore no trace of anger or resentment. Instead, he smiled warmly. Of course, he replied. After a brief pause, she struggled to find the right words. I'm so sorry for everything I said, for how I acted. You know what's interesting about being our age? Barron interrupted thoughtfully. We're old enough to have strong convictions, yet young enough to let those convictions sometimes blind us. It's natural to get caught up in ideologies and passionate beliefs. That's exactly why the wisdom of older generations is so valuable. They've been exactly where we are. Emily stared at him, taken aback by his compassion. How are you so wise about all this? She asked. With a gentle smile, he answered. I've had good teachers. People who taught me that true strength isn't about winning arguments. It's about building understanding. Our elders have fought the same battles, felt the same certainties, and learned the same hard lessons. We don't have to agree with everyone, but we do need to respect their journey. Overwhelmed by his kindness, Emily suddenly stepped forward and hugged him. For a moment, Barron looked surprised, but then he returned the embrace with a tenderness that spoke of genuine understanding. As they parted, both knew this moment was about more than winning or losing a debate. It was about something far more profound. The instant when wisdom overcame pride and understanding conquered divisions. And if you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for more inspiring tales that celebrate the values that make America great. Thanks for watching. God bless you, and God bless America.